T-Mobile. I'm so excited. Y'all, it's been 3 years since we've gotten together for a Pride activity. So stoked. Meanwhile, we've had some other things going on this month. Puerto Rico, I saw you and your Pride. You guys look beautiful as usual. Kansas City was also another first time at Pride, especially branded as T-Mobile, so congrats. But us here in Bellevue and all of you out in the webcast, this is our first official big event today. Could not be more excited. I'm Jen Smith. I am your Pride ERG leader. I am also Senior Director in the Technology PMO. Woo, my party peeps are here. My pronouns are she, her. So I could not be more excited for today's guest. Your Pride board has been dying to have Amber here with us, and we couldn't be more excited that she's here with us today. And so this year, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about our Pride ERG and what we're celebrating. Right, we want to empower our employees and our members to stand in their power and be advocates for their communities. So we're connecting you all to resources and showcasing advocates who inspire all of us. And so when we were thinking about this month, right, the theme that we wanted to follow, we wanted to make sure that we didn't ignore the reality of today's queer experience. You know, for me, to be an advocate for the community, mine was deeply personal how I actually started this journey. Many of you know I'm a proud mom to, well, a lot of kids. And, you know, the eldest of whom is gay. And that's how I started my journey to really understand, how can I be an advocate? How can I support? Because regardless, I want all my kids to live their truth. No matter their sexual orientation, no matter their gender identity, no matter, you know, I've got a couple of neurodiverse kids as well, right? And so we all need to be very purposeful in how we show up as allies to our, you know, within the communities. So this is an important role for all of us to play here, right? We all need to live by the mantra of, when you know better, you do better. All right, so let's get into it. Before I start and then introduce our amazing leader, our amazing speaker, we have a few housekeeping items for y'all. So for everyone out in the webcast, you should see the Q&A box on your screen right now. And please feel free to submit questions at any point in time. For this crew here in Bellevue, we've got the mic up front. We'll be doing Q&A when Amber is done. And so please feel free to step up to the mic there as well. And then finally, we've got a whole host of folks who are super excited about today's guest speaker. We have activities going on in the Slack channel. Slack channel is the long one if you haven't been there yet. The Slack channel is TMUS_Pride_allies. And so please join the conversation there. We might be giving away some of these limited edition sparkly t-shirts in there. So please be sure to get active and join in the conversation. I know you're going to just be blown away by what you hear today. All right, I've mentioned it a few times, trying not to fangirl too hard. So I need to properly introduce our guest speaker. So Amber Hikes, forward here. So community organizer, social justice advocate, unapologetically queer and Black, and ACLU's Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. Amber's pronouns are she, her, they, them. Amber's impressive career, and you all need to Google this later, their career began at an early age as a community organizer, and then into advocacy. So advocating for education access at the University of Pennsylvania as the youngest upward bound director in the country. Prior to joining the ACLU, Amber served as the executive director of the Philadelphia Mayor's Office for LGBTQ affairs, and where they also developed policy and served as the principal advisor to the mayor on issues that affect the LGBTQ plus community. Not only that, Amber has been recognized nationally by Out Magazine in 2018 as Community Organizer of the Year. As if that's not enough, Amber's also been recognized by Business Equality Pride as one of the 40 LGBTQ plus leaders under 40. So amazing. So Amber is going to join us today. We've got an activity as well. I'm super excited. Activities that folks on remotely can participate in as well. So Amber's going to talk to us today about intersectional allyship, belonging, and how our pride is our power, and how we can all be advocates for community and making an impact. So my Magenta fam, please help me give a warm T-Mobile welcome to Amber Hikes.
so much. What the a heck of an introduction. I very much appreciate that. Magenta fam, I like that too. Hey y'all, happy Pride. Oh man. Good morning, you all. I am so excited to be here. I'm gonna say that was a nice warm welcome, but I'm gonna say happy Pride again because we are off Zoom, we are in person, we are all here together, and it's Pride Month, so happy Pride, Magenta fam. That's what's up, that's what's up. That's the energy that I am looking for. I'm asking you to keep that same energy through our whole time that we're hanging out here this morning. And I've said before that I'm so happy to be here. I am proud to be here. I am going to work really hard to keep our energy up in this room because I am thrilled that not only are we here in person, but we also have some opportunities virtually for folks. So I'm going to do my best to keep us all together and engaged and really connected during this. So I'm going to start that right now. What you can already see here is that there is a QR code, and I'm going to invite you all to take your, I see folks are already getting those phones out. Take your phones out, get your camera open there, and you're going to scan that QR code, and the question's going to pop up for you on your phone. Can someone give me a thumbs up if it's working for them? Wait, I see some thumbs. Fantastic. So what I want to know from you all is if you could march in Pride, a Pride event with anyone, who would it be? And this is anonymous, right? And so this is someone, let's see, living. It could be somebody that's living, somebody who has passed. It can be somebody you know in your family or somebody the whole world knows, right? So somebody in your family or somebody in Hollywood. Maybe somebody in your family is in Hollywood. Look, I don't know your life. Like, maybe that's a possibility. But and I'm gonna do this with you all. And so you're gonna go ahead, drop that in there in that Padlet activity, and we're gonna see who you want to go to Pride with. Yes, the first one I saw was Lizzo, which is exactly my answer. Beyonce, maybe. I don't know if y'all heard that new song. Your family, just I love that. RuPaul. Lady Gaga, that's a really good one. Robin was playing earlier. That's it. Amber Heights, y'all are so sweet. My daughter, all my LGBTQ friends, Justice Ginsburg, that's a good one too. Neil Patrick Harris, Laverne Cox. You all, this is incredible. And I hope the folks who are joining us virtually can do this as well. Please keep dropping those in because what I wanted to do was bring in the spirit of our family, of our leaders, of our ancestors, as we talk about the spirit of Pride. So thank you all. As Jen mentioned before, my name is Amber Hikes. I use they and she pronouns, and I'm the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer at the American Civil Liberties Union. And so for those who don't know as much about the ACLU, I'll tell you that we work in the courts and the legislatures in our communities to defend and preserve the individual rights that are guaranteed to all people by the Constitution. And that's because we believe that we the people means all of us. And so we fight to extend that justice to folks who have not traditionally had it by the Constitution. And I'm really proud to work at the ACLU, really supporting the folks who are very literally trying to change the landscape of social justice and civil liberties in our country today. And so my position as Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer means that I work to make sure that our insides match our outsides. And what I mean by that is that if we are going to fight for equity and justice externally, then we have to be beacons for those very same principles internally, right? And so it's all about matching those insides to my outsides. And so I provide the vision and the leadership for our equity, diversity, inclusion work. So now let's get into it, right? Because I've been invited here to celebrate Pride with you all, and I'm happy to do it. And I appreciate, just thinking about Pride, how in just my lifetime, it feels like Pride went from one day to one weekend to a whole damn month. And like this year, I don't know if everybody else realized, but I felt like Target had those like rainbow swim shorts out on like May 1st, right? Like they were on it. and I'm not disparaging that at all. I actually appreciate it. I think that Pride can't be celebrated enough. But what I wanted us to talk about is how we can get deeper in our commitment for Pride and how we can really center that the purpose of Pride means more than the party, right? The purpose means more than the party. And I'm here for a good party, absolutely all the time. But I want us to get to reconnecting and recommitting to the real spirit and the vision of Pride that is inclusion and justice and belonging. So Pride for me and I imagine for you all as well, is about resilience, right? Pride is about a deep interdependence of our communities. Pride reminds us about our fight for collective liberation. And I know all of us have an opportunity right now to show up better for one another. And I think all the time, you don't have to be leading a protest. You don't have to be on CNN. You don't have to be that kind of leader to be showing up better for your communities. And so I want us to talk today about how we can be making a difference for each other. There's this theory out there that all of us live our lives in about 4 different places, right? At home, at school, at church or temple or mosque, and at work. And for many LGBTQ folks, we might have been rejected at home, right? We may not be welcome in our places of worship. We may have been bullied at school. And so work can often be the one place where you truly feel belonging, right? It can be the one place where you truly feel community. And so getting this right at work, it matters. It matters so deeply. If you think about it, we spend the majority of our conscious hours at work. And so if you spend the majority of your conscious hours in a place where you feel like you don't belong, like there's something wrong with you, right? Think about how deeply upsetting and disorienting, right? And isolating that can be. But when we get it right, our workplaces can become spaces of inclusion and belonging and justice and equity in a world that doesn't always feel so equitable and inclusive. So in my work, if we're able to create those kinds of spaces of belonging at work, then that feels like some labor that we can really commit ourselves to. That feels like a calling that we can't say no to. So our allyship, I say all the time, it doesn't have to cover the world, but it can start by at least covering our colleagues, right? It can cover our team members. So I'm gonna jump into that, but before I do that, I want to stay here on this idea of allyship, because I know folks in this room and folks that are joining us virtually, you're not new to this concept of allyship, but I know there's kind of myriad understanding. So I just want to center us, and for our purposes here today, when I'm talking about allyship, I'm talking about engaging your privilege and your power to fight with and for a community that you are not a part of, right? That you are not a member of. And allyship is also intentional and it's accountable, right? It's a verb, not just a self-identity, right? And the final thing I'll say about it is that allyship is about actions, not just words. And what I mean by that is you are an ally because you do so, not just because you say so, right? We're an ally because we do so, not just because we say so. And I really like that definition of allyship because it aligns perfectly with leadership as well. I'll tell you a quick story about this. There's this sage that people would come all over the world to talk to, right? And they would travel for wisdom. And this mother brought her son to this sage because he was eating too much candy. The son was just a candy freak, eating too much candy. And so when it was her turn, she came and she was like, "Listen, sage, can you please tell him to just chill it out with the candy? It's entirely too much." And the sage said, "No, I can't do that. Go home. Come back in 2 months and we'll do it then." And so 2 months pass, mother returns with the son and says, "Can you please get him to cut it out with the candy?" And the sage says, "All right, I'll talk to him." So he talks to the son, thanks the sage profusely. And as they're leaving, she says, "Why do we have to wait 2 months?" And he said, "Well, honestly, 2 months ago, I was eating too much candy." and so I tell that story because leadership is about what we do, not just what we say, in the same way that allyship is about how we act, not just how we feel. And how we act matters. It matters deeply. I'm gonna get a little more serious here, especially when we're talking about kind of the state of the world for the LGBTQ community right now, especially during Pride. How we act matters because every day there's a trans child who's being deprived of life-saving medical care. How we act matters because LGBTQ children and teenagers aren't safe in their schools. How we act really matters because when we're living at the intersection of being black and queer, or brown and non-binary, or Asian and transgender, we are living at the intersection of so many harms and oppressions and violence. How we act matters because trans kids deserve to play sports. They deserve protection. How we act matters because trans kids deserve to become adults. How we act matters. And so I'm going to get a little closer to home, and I'm going to put up another QR code. You all should have another one. We can pull down this, and it's the Slido code. And it's a quick poll. And I'm going to ask you, maybe it shouldn't be there. Should have been before all that. But let me see if let me just make sure this is the right code for you all. I don't want us to get too far ahead here. It's not the right one. It should have been one before that. It's okay if you all don't have it though. I can skip over it, but I was actually I'll do a show of hands actually. That's what we'll do. We won't be able to do the poll just yet because it's not there. I'm gonna ask you, and it can't be anonymous, but I'm just gonna do a show of hands. When was the last time that you experienced or witnessed a microaggression that impacted the LGBTQ community? And this is not just at work. I'm talking about in life. You could be when you're watching TV. And I'm not necessarily talking about direct bias and discrimination right now. I'm talking about the everyday harms, right? Harms like, and this is a bias though, but people being misgendered, people being treated like a social accessory, right? Maybe someone assuming that someone else doesn't have a child because they're LGBTQ. A colleague being overfamiliar with someone because they're gay, right? Or someone assuming that someone else is not a member of the LGBTQ community because or invisibilizing them because they're too masculine or too feminine or too bi or too whatever stereotype doesn't match up. And so I'm going to ask you all, if you've experienced or seen or witnessed a microaggression like that against the LGBTQ community in the last day, week, month, I want you to raise your hand. Yeah, look around, because I can see you all, but you can't see each other. Almost everyone has their hands raised. And thank you all. I know it was a little heavy, but I wanted us to do that because I wanted us to see that it's so easy to point to anti-trans legislation or the Don't Say Gay bill or the false imprisonment of Brittany Griner and say, I can't do anything about those things. But I wanted us to see in this room that these everyday microaggressions happen to the people that we care about. We are there, we witness them, and we have more power than we give ourselves credit for. There are things that we can do to stop the harm and to stand up and make things different, especially when we're talking about culture. And so I want you all to see that the need isn't just out there, it's also in here. And so for visual learners, I'll make this a little more direct. And I'll tell you how I've seen this show up before for corporations. A few years back, there was an airline that had been working on getting their LGBTQ policies right. And they had redone their benefits. They universalized their employee experience across their multinational footprint. And they had just spent about, they did LGBTQ recruitment campaigns. They spent about $1 million investing in their LGBTQ equality internally and externally. And they had just gotten 100% on the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index. And that same year, after all of those things had been done, they'd happened, a married couple boarded one of their flights. And this airline had a policy that if a married couple came onto the plane, they would be able to sit together, right? But it happened that there were not seats that were available. So the flight attendant approached a man and said, "Hi, would you mind moving your seats? This couple just boarded, they'd like to sit together." And the man said, "Oh, well, I'm actually here with my partner, who's also a man. So, I'd like to say where I am." And she said, "Yes, but our policy is that married couples sit together. So will you please move your seat? And if you're not going to move your seat, you can get off the plane." And he, my friends, got off the plane. And this happened in 2018. And it made national news. And when the airline apologized, which they did quickly, in their press statement, they said they'd gotten 100% on the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index. And that's what I mean when I say that if we don't get culture right, if we don't do that, then our policies and our equality indexes and all that stuff, it doesn't matter, right? We have to do more. So if you have gender affirming health benefits, but you don't hold a trans inclusive training for your frontline staff, you're gonna have a problem, right? I see some heads nodding. If your company gives everybody the day off for Juneteenth, but when there's an injustice that happens against Black folks in the media and you don't know how to hold space for your Black colleagues during that, you're gonna have a problem. You're gonna have a problem. If our comms team puts out a beautiful graphic for International Women's Day, but you don't address the gender pay gap, you're gonna have a problem. And if we check all of our boxes with our ADA accommodations, but we don't consider accessibility when we do our offsites, my friends, we're gonna have a problem, because culture is where the change happens, right? Culture is where belonging lives. And as allies and accomplices, we are the torchbearers for culture, right? So there's so much that we can do. I know for many of us, those realities are tough to hear, right? It's really tough to hear. There's all this work that we have to do, but I name it because if we don't name it, we can't change it. And I'm not just talking about T-Mobile. I tell you, my friends, I work with global companies. I work with higher ed institutions, government agencies, every single sector, and everyone, nonprofits especially, and we're all grappling with how we make this real and how we make this tangible. And I want to name it because in my experience, LGBTQ folks in particular are facing diverse and profoundly different sets of experiences and opportunities and challenges. So I said a lot, and I'm going to try to hear from you all for a moment. We're going to do that activity that Jen was talking about. And we're going to take this from the macro and bring it in to the micro here and take it from this big picture, kind of 10,000 foot view, and we're going to get into the weeds. And the best way that we're going to do that is we're going to make this personal. So, yes, thank you so much. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to ask you all to get a piece of paper and write down an identity that you hold, and it's going to be anonymous. Write down an identity you hold. You can write down several identities that you wish your colleagues would show up a little better around, all right? An identity that you hold that you wish your colleagues and your team members could show up better around and being an ally to. So maybe you're non-binary and it's really nice that your colleagues watch Drag Race, but you really wish they could practice using they, them pronouns, right? Maybe you're Black and it's great that your team members put on a BLM sticker on their laptop, but you'd really like for someone to speak up next time your idea gets erased or claimed by someone else. Maybe you're an immigrant and you love seeing all the Ukrainian flags, but you wish people would keep that same energy for Black and brown immigrants. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We have ways that we can be better allies to each other. Maybe you're Latinx and you love how much everybody loves Encanto, but you are being asked to do unpaid translation work. That's something we're working on at the ACLU, so I'm calling myself out right there. There's a lot of work that we can do to show up as better allies for each other. So I want you to think about an identity that you hold. Maybe you're a woman and you wish that you would stop getting interrupted in meetings and somebody would help you out with that. So I want you all to write down identities that you hold, just an identity you hold, somewhere you wish that your colleagues can show up as a better ally for you. Maybe you're a woman or you're early in your career or you're neurodiverse or a veteran, person with a disability. Think about that identity you hold, write it down on a piece of paper. And remember, this is somewhere you wish folks would show up as a better ally for you. This is going to be anonymous. I can promise that to a certain extent. And for the folks virtually, we had a Padlet for you, but I'm not sure if you all have it just yet. I'm going to ask you all if you want, you can throw it into chat. All right. You're going to write that identity down. And you are going to crumple that piece of paper up into the tightest ball that you can. Tight ball. Crumple it up. And for those in person, a little surprise for you, we're going to have the biggest snowball fight that I think Seattle has seen in June ever. All right? All right, crumple it up. And when I count to 3, you are going to throw your snowball somewhere in the room, and you're going to keep throwing snowballs, all right? One's going to come to you to pick it up. You're going to throw it around. We're going to get this nice and mixed up, all right? And I'm definitely taking a picture of y'all. All right. One. Oh, you are ready right there. You are ready. 1, 2, 3. Keep going. Keep throwing those snowballs. Yep. Y'all keep going. Make sure you mix them up. I need them mixed up real good. Mix them up. Throw them 2 more times. And then make sure you have one. Make sure you've got a snowball. Keep it. If there's one around you, throw it so somebody else can have one. And you can hold on to your snowball once you get it. All right. Fantastic. Y'all did a pretty good job there. Mix it up. All right. Now what I'm going to ask you all to do is go ahead and uncrumple those. And take a look. And if you feel comfortable, would love to have maybe 3 people shout out what's on theirs. Hand raised. What you got, friend? All right. Okay, got woman, disability. Hello, how you doing? All right. Woman and with a disability and differently able is what somebody said. All right, what else we got? Other identities that we wish folks to show up as better allies. Y'all having a hard time reading each other's handwriting? That's what it would have been if I threw a snowball. I'll tell you that. Like, I have no idea what this says. Did I see a hand? Queer? Wishing that there was more to Pride Month than just a parade? I got that. Cheers for that one. Absolutely. Again, the purpose, more important than the party. What else we got? Give me one more. What else do you all have? That's exactly right. A woman that wants more support for equality. I am so here for that. I'll come back and talk to you all for Women's History Month. We will talk about the allyship that we can do for women. Because, child, I got a list. All right. I want us to really listen to what our colleagues and our team members are lifting up here. Because I said before, if we don't name it, we can't change it. So we have a responsibility to transform this reality for our colleagues. And that paper that you're holding, it's your reminder that you have colleagues that you can show up better for. And so I want you to hold on to it. Do me a favor, hold on to that, crumple it. Definitely don't leave it here. You can take it with you, but at the very least, make sure you don't leave it here in this space. So when we think about our LGBTQ leaders, we think often about Audre Lorde or Baird Rustin or Harvey Milk, Janet Mock. But when you think about LGBTQ leaders, I want to invite you to think about the queer and trans folks that are in your own lives. I want you to think about your friends, your colleagues, your teammates, yourself. And so if you listen with like a quiet focus to old tapes of Marsha P. Johnson, I want you to use that same focus the next time an LGBTQ colleague of yours shares her big ideas, all right? If you're gleeful about a dive from Tom Daly or cheering on Little Nas X or holding tight to a dog-eared book of James Baldwin, I want you to be rooting just as hard for your non-binary colleagues, supporting just as fiercely your gay colleagues. I want you to be finding ways to include your bi colleagues who may not be feeling like they fit in, right? If you would amplify the brilliance of your favorite gay TikToker, the next time a queer person in a meeting brings that idea to the table, I want you to amplify their idea, give them credit, and support them in getting it across the finish line, right? Because what's required of us now, today, in all of Pride is a real commitment to action. And at the center of that action has to be an awareness of our own individual responsibility, right? What we can actually do as folks. So this work is for all of us. And so I said I was going to get into the weeds, and I want to do that. You all been looking at this slide for this whole time here, so I'm going to move us through. And I want to talk concretely about what we can do at work, at home, every day. And it doesn't matter how much positional power we hold or how long we've been here. There are tips that we can move forward for our own allyship, no matter who we are. So the very first one you see here is make the implicit explicit. Make the invisible visible. And I remind my staff all the time, can't change it until we name it. And so I want us to be willing to bring up the uncomfortable, right? To speak up. And so when I say speak up, I'm going to invite us to aim less for being a sportscaster, and more for intervention. Now, what do I mean by that? Sometimes we'll leave a meeting and we'll say, there were no women in there. That was weird. Or you'll see a commercial and be like, that was racist. And that's really important, but you're sportscasting. And so noticing is important, but I want to invite us to take it a little step further and intervene. At the ACLU, we have a training that we call upstander intervention, right? And folks may be familiar with this philosophy. It encourages people to speak up when they witness an injustice or a microaggression or a problematic situation. And I first learned of it in the context of like actual physical violence and street harassment, actually, and how we as bystanders could stand up. But you can use it in a workplace, a school setting. There's all kinds of ways. And so we adapt it for a workplace, and we can give practical tools for how you can intervene when something comes up that causes harm. And there are a range of ways that we can speak up. For instance, I talked about, and since we have women that are looking for allies here, I talked before about how often women are interrupted in meetings. And so one of the things you could do the next time you see that happening is there's a range of ways that you can intervene. You can say, hey, Will, I think you might have interrupted Grace. Or you can say, hey, Grace, I think I missed what you said. Can you repeat that again, right? And so one is being much more direct in naming the interruption, and the other is just giving Grace back the mic, right? But you have a range of interventions. What's really important about being able to speak up is it names the thing, and it also lets that person who may be being interrupted see that they have an ally in the room. So the training is fantastic, but you know what? You don't need the training to just be able to interrupt in that way. Number 2 is progress over perfection. You can go to that next slide for me, please. Listen, if you are really doing this work and you're doing it every day, you're going to get it wrong, my friends. You're going to get it wrong sometimes. I have been at this work for my entire career, my whole life, and I get it wrong plenty. I get called in all the time. And I'll tell you, I am grateful for it. When we are working with and we're in community with such smart and driven people, we're going to get called in by those same smart and driven people. And so what I want to invite us to do is to welcome and start accepting those call-ins as the gifts that they are, right? So let's normalize that. And I have a lot of tips here, but with my limited time, I'm going to give you a little bit of a call-in hack. It's a little bit of a call-in hack. The way that I approach someone calling me in, and I try to manage my own defensiveness about it, is approaching it like someone is telling me that I have food in my teeth. All right? Rock with me here for a second. When somebody tells you have food in your teeth, right, what do you do? First, you're like, oh, thanks. And you get the food out, you thank them, and you move forward to the next room, a little more aware. What we don't do is shut down, tell somebody you're wrong. I don't have food in my teeth. What the hell are you talking about? You misunderstood. That's not food. That's something. We don't do that, right? We're grateful for the labor that they just did to make sure that we don't show up looking like a fool in the next room. And so I want us to use that frame the next time someone tells us that we used some outdated language, or we told an offensive joke that was harmful, or that we misgendered somebody. I want us to keep that energy. Thank you. Let me get myself together and let me go to the room and be able to move on better. Because what it really comes down to is people don't have to give you that labor, right? That person have to tell you have food in your teeth. Go ahead and let you look like a fool in the next room. Fine. But they did that because they want you to do better. They want the culture to be better. They're trying to help you out, right? It's uncomfortable for everybody, and they did that labor to help you out. So next time you get called in, we all get called in, let's take that as the opportunity to do better and be better. Progress, not perfection. And the third one is clean your house first. Now, this is probably the most important one. When I talk to teams and corporations and even ERGs, and I talk about intersectionality and allyship, one of the first things they do is they look around their group and they notice the group is a little different than what they want it to look like. Maybe it's too male or too white or too cis or too something that's more homogeneous than they like. And then the next thing they do is they start recruiting, right? And they get these recruitment campaigns. And I appreciate that drive and desire. I really, really, really do. But the first thing I want you to do is clean your house first before you invite company over. You understand what I'm talking about? And what I mean by that is looking around and making sure, is this space a place where people who have marginalized identities are not going to be, they're going to be welcomed and included, right? They're not going to be invisibilized or tokenized. Is this a space where racism and ableism and xenophobia and sexism are going to be challenged directly and quickly? Is this a space where the people I'm inviting in are not going to experience harm, right? So definitely do those recruitment campaigns, but clean your house first before you invite folks over. If you don't, that house just becomes a revolving door. We know how that goes, all right? So I've done a lot of talking. I'm for real going to put up a QR code this time. I already saw it. I know it exists. Some of you already have it on your phones there. And I want you all, when you consider at home, at work, in the world, some of the things that I've named here today, when you consider these things, I want you to think about what you can do. What you can do. Think about what's in your head, your hearts, and your hands. Now, I'm going to move you through this activity. I'm going to give some prompts, some examples to help you get started. But while I'm talking, you all are going to go ahead and fill out each of those columns. And we're going to start with the head. Now, I'm talking from you all have heard, talking from a very intersectional perspective this morning, right? It's Pride Month. We're talking about LGBTQ identity, but I'm talking about a lot of different marginalized identities. And so I've talked about a lot of these communities because the LGBTQ community, of course, is multifaceted. But I'm going to focus us right now on the LGBTQ community because it's Pride. So what is in your head about your allyship for LGBTQ communities? What are you thinking about? What kind of big ideas do you already have about what you could do better to be a better ally? And so I want you to be thinking about, I'm a big believer you don't have to be sick to get better. And so I think that there's work for all of us to do no matter where we are in our journeys. So maybe you're realizing that you make some assumptions about who people are based on the identities that they have. And you can start checking yourself and checking this house first, right? Maybe you have an idea for how you could be a mentor or even better yet, a sponsor to a young queer person who's early in their career, who's on your team. Maybe you can add pronouns to your email signature, right, to your Zoom name, these kind of things. These are just prompts, only you know what's true for you, but give me an idea about what's in your head around your own allyship, all right? And I'm gonna make sure that I can see what you all are doing. This is how you personally, in your head, around how you can personally show up a little bit better. All right, sharing my story, I see, encouraging more of safe spaces, speaking up, love that. Learn more about the challenges my friends and my colleagues face. I love that education piece, that self-education piece is often that very first step and the most important part. And I hope our virtual folks can see the link and y'all should be able to engage as well. You all keep populating the head. I'm going to move us to the heart because I see some folks are already getting the hang of it. If the head is about our ideas, the heart, of course, is about our feelings. So what feelings are coming up for you in your own journey? I want you to do an inventory there. Should have mentioned at the top that I'm a social worker. I have a background in social work, so I like to talk about the feelings sometimes. And so maybe you feel excited about these kinds of conversations. You feel excited about getting involved in our employee resource group programs. Maybe you're feeling hopeful that the contributions you have, some of the conversations you have, that you want to have are going to be taken seriously. Maybe you're feeling anxious, right? That the identities that you bring won't be fully included when we talk about equity. Or maybe some of the stuff that I've elevated is a little challenging for you, right? Maybe you're feeling a little defensive. That comes up for folks as well. Maybe you're feeling hopeful, right? I want to know what is in your head. What is in your head? And I'll name that it's so hard to talk about some of these equity issues because especially right now in the world is such a challenging and tough place. I want to invite us to really lean in here, right? Making change is hard. Staying the same is hard. We get to pick our hard, right? And so I wanna invite us to push ourselves to to lean in and be empowered to keep doing better. So let's see what's coming up for folks in their hearts here. All right. Coming from a place of love, coming with understanding, coming with an open heart, empathy. Y'all are so touchy-feely. That's what I'm talking about. I love it. Leading with love. Yes, meeting someone where they are and going to them. Oh, man, I see the folks are happy that we're talking about equality. And I love not imposing my feelings of frustration or disappointment in the world when instead holding space for the affected communities to do so. That is so real. I talk all the time about centering the most impacted people, and there are different folks who are more deeply impacted by certain events and certain things. And so I love that someone is being mindful of just like checking their own privilege, checking their own space that they take up when we're trying to center other communities that are more impacted. So thank you for lifting that up. The last section that what you reflect on is your hands. And so I'll say quickly that in 1965, there was this rabbi that went to Alabama and to walk with Dr. King on the marches from Selma. And when he returned, someone asked him if he found time to pray while he was there. And he said, I prayed with my feet. I prayed with my feet. And I mention that because this work can't just live in our heads and our hearts, right? It has to live in our hands. And so I'm going to ask us to hope with our hands. And so this doesn't just live with your ERGs or your HR teams or your D&I teams. This is work for all of us. And all of us, not just to wish for and to hope for, but for all of us to work for. And so I want you to think about what's in your control when it comes to building an inclusive culture, right? For LGBTQ folks in particular, what you can do and what you will do. And so I know that you all have already started thinking about this. You thought about it a little bit in the head and the heart. So maybe you commit to having uncomfortable conversations when you hear someone tell a harmful joke, right? Maybe you commit to speaking up if you hear someone being misgendered. Maybe you'll check in on a coworker that you know is looking real depleted, right? Maybe you'll finally talk to that transphobic uncle that you know you need to talk to. Maybe you'll finally do that, right? Okay, I know that's the tough work, right? But that's what allyship looks like. And so as you all are populating that, and I'll wrap up in just a moment, I want to name that there's good news and bad news with this. The bad news is that all the oppressions that we're talking about, right, they're all interconnected, right? Homophobia is tied up in sexism. Sexism protects ableism. Ableism is deeply connected to racism. And all these oppressions are tied up together. But the good news is that they all untangle together too. They all untangle together too. So don't get too overwhelmed by the millions of knots, right? Just know that when you do your work, when you start pulling on those threads, they can start to untangle, right? The impression can start to unravel. So write down what's in your head, your hearts, your hands, my friends. And I'm going to look that you all are talking about educating, having those real conversations, being there for when people need somebody, being an ally, giving empowerment, support our colleagues of the LGBTQ community, reaching out to our LGBT teenagers. Y'all heard me talk a lot about our youth. I love this. Knowing that I have a strong enough voice to speak up and advocate for change. It's that empowering piece, honey. It's the empowerment for me. Y'all, I can't even keep up with all this. I think our virtual folks found the link because there's a lot in here. Y'all see this? I'm like just scrolling. Lead by example for peers, the younger generation as well as the older to try to bring change. Man, y'all got this. Y'all got this. I'm going to do one more activity as we wrap up and move to Q&A kind of quickly. I think there's one more. There's one more link. There it is. Fantastic. Thank you so much to our incredible tech team. I appreciate you all. And I'm going to talk with Jim. We're going to do a little Q&A after this. But I want you all to help me build a word cloud together. And I want you to just throw in one word to describe how you're feeling today about your allyship journey. I know I talked a lot. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed, right? I said a whole lot. Maybe you're feeling excited. Maybe you're feeling ready. Maybe you're hopeful. But I'm asking you to put that one word in there. And since it's a word cloud, if you put it in there, you see somebody else to put a word that feels like what you're feeling, you put that in there as well, and the word gets bigger, all right? So tell me one word that describes how you're feeling today about your allyship. And when you hit send, you'll be able to see, and it looks like we got a lot of folks jumping in. Wow, okay, I see hopeful, I see inspired, energized, optimistic, determined, motivated, galvanized. All right, SAT word, better come on now. I see pride. I was an English major, so I get really excited about these things. Respected, progress. I love all of this, you all. I just want you to take a screenshot of that because this work is long and hard and we get really discouraged often. But I want you to remind yourself where you are today and keep coming back to that if you need just a little pump up, a little kick in the pants sometimes. Pride, I just want to see the struggle for our collective liberation is really at the heart and the purpose of Pride. And if Marcia and Sylvia and some of our leaders at Stonewall taught us anything, it's that if Pride isn't for all of us, then it doesn't hold any meaning for any of us, right? And so we have to lean into that collective liberation. If we're not walking for that collective liberation in Pride, then we might as well not march at all. So I invite y'all to toast and dance and celebrate, but always build on the sacred legacy of Pride that we've been gifted, all right? Dance in the streets, march with joy, but don't stop fighting, my friends. We haven't come this far to only come this far. Happy Pride, y'all. Happy Pride, and thank you so very much.
Oh my goodness.
Let's talk. Yeah, let's talk.
That was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now you get why I was fangirling and the whole Pride board is fanning out. Wonderful. So, all right, we've got time for Q&A, folks. So as a reminder, we've got, I know, a lot of questions coming in. If folks who are joining us virtually, please feel free to submit more questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Folks here in the room, there's a microphone right up front, so please don't hesitate. And so let's send that in, and why don't we get started? I think we're going to flip over here while we're getting that adjusted. You know, Amber, you talked about the uncle. We all have the uncle, and I recently had the uncle doing. I think you heard about State Farm. There's a lot of book bans going on, especially for our LGBTQ youth, and talking about trans kids. And there's a phenomenal organization called the Gender Cool Project, which we just adore those kids. And they have written some great books, and these are written by kids. And my uncle was going off about why are we talking about sex ed in school? And I'm like, wait a second, I read those books. What the heck are you talking about? They're handing out these cool books that these kids had written. And you know what? So I went on and I countered my uncle, and I think he was a little shocked.
You sure?
But then, I went out and I bought the 3-pack of books myself. So if you all want to buy those 3-pack of books, that's a great counter for your crazy uncles. If anyone wants to borrow my books, please let me know. I will happy to share them, and you guys can share them with your crazy uncles too. So
thank you for naming that. I just want to say, I joke about the transphobic uncle or the racist grandma, but it's so important. Those conversations are, I think, some of the most important ones to have, because we all know the messenger matters, right? And they gonna hear it from you better than your uncle's gonna hear it from me, right? And so leaning in and taking that risk to have the uncomfortable conversation is really what makes the change. And I know many of us, the allies and accomplices, have so many different stories of having to have those challenging conversations over the years. I want to invite us to keep having them, keep showing up for them, even if it feels like you're not making any headway. Having the conversation, pushing the envelope on that, it really, 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 really matters. So thanks for doing that. And the books. The books are great. They're awesome. Highly recommend. There's so many questions, but we got a question in person.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Hey.
Hi.
So, thank you for being here today. It was wonderful and beautiful. Most of my life, I was actually closeted. Grew up in a very religious household. And hearing voices like yours would have made such an impact on my early life. So one, thank you for sharing. What in your life caused you or, allowed you to be so open and just be able to speak about things? Because I feel like I still have a hard time in my life speaking up sometimes. I just wanted to hear more about your early experience.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being vulnerable with us and sharing about your coming up. It wasn't always like this, to be totally honest. There are, as Jen did in my bio, there are a lot of marginalized identities going on here. And for a long time, it wasn't So easy to speak up. I also grew up in a pretty religious home, grew up in the South. I'm a Georgian, and grew up in a very, very, very racist South. Like, and to the extent I remember seeing Klans people like on the way to the grocery store. Like, I mean, like, right. And I'm not an old person. I'm not like I'm old enough, but I'm not like a terribly old person. Like, this is, when I graduated from high school, they were taking the Confederate flag off the Georgia state flag, right? I name that because I am not a very old person, and that happened when I was in high school. And so that kind of experiencing that kind of racism on a regular basis, that close, it felt like there really wasn't another option, right? Kids like me, and not just black kids, like it was the trans kids, the queer kids, the gay kids who were also bullied by these folks, because again, all these oppressions are connected. And it was kind of experiencing that bullying and realizing that they profit off of our silence, right? Those bullies can move and advance if we don't speak up. That made me realize that kind of our existence depends on our ability to be able to stand up to them and shut it down, or have the conversation with the transphobic uncle. And so it just really it became about survival. One of the things that actually helped me make this step is surrounding myself with community who felt the same. So it's all about that strength in numbers and finding my people. I talk all the time about finding your people, whether that's finding your people at work, finding your people in community, finding your people in your family, right? You have the transphobic uncle, but you also have the one like really liberal aunt. Yeah. And so you're like, all right, we're going to be friends. We're just going to bust it up for Thanksgiving. We're going to figure it out, right? But finding those people, even if there's just one or two of you, you need to have that kind of buoy you and be the wind beneath your wings, and never stop looking to find your people. The final thing that I want to say on this, my mom was a huge part of this before she passed, but the final thing that continues to push me now are the young people. I have a non-binary god kid who just came out last year, and knowing that my godchild, when they came out, they were wrapped in so much love and acceptance, and like you, I'm like, I can't even imagine being able, they have incredible care that they're receiving at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, but knowing that there is a push for this kid to not be able to talk about who they are, their own identity or mine, not be able to play sports, not get the literally life-saving healthcare they have. That is why we have to keep speaking up. That is it. It's truly just about that. But glad you're here. Glad you're speaking up. And thank you so much for the question.
There's a great question here. I think it takes it to the next step here, and I think that this is so important that you can help answer. This person says, I am so frustrated with all of the anti-LGBTQ plus legislation out there, and there are hundreds of bills out there that are anti-LGBTQ. So, Amber, what do you think? How can we inspire others to take action here?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's first of all telling some of those personal stories, right? And there are so many of them. I'll put in a plug for the ACLU. You all know that we are fighting on the front lines of this. My very good colleague, Chase Strangio, is one of the people that is like literally litigating against these things. So follow us. We have so many actions. We got all the letter writing campaigns, all of that. But honestly, it's back to those conversations. People do not realize how truly these bills are matters of life and death for folks. It is literally life and death. And we are legislating, we are litigating people's actual lives. And so making that point to folks, showing them the real impact it has. I am not being hyperbolic when I just talked about my godchild. If they were not able to get the health care they have, I don't know that they'd be here. And I mean that so very seriously. We're talking about young people being able to just be themselves and become adults. That's what we're really talking about. So follow the ACLU, follow folks like Chase Strangio, follow HRC. We are the ones. We'll give you talking points. We'll help you have those conversations. We'll also help you write the letters, make the phone calls. But I'm not going to lie, it is incredibly discouraging, and it's terrifying to see how we're falling so far back and behind, and the real impacts and implications it'll have for real young folks' lives.
And I think you spoke a bit about how your godchild, you don't know if they would be here today.
That's right.
The LGBTQ kids have the highest suicide rate out of any kids.
Correct.
You narrow that down to trans, non-binary kids. That number's even higher, and those are just the numbers that we know of. So it truly is life and death.
You're exactly right.
On this legislation. So it's very important.
Sure.
We've got a question here in person.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, great.
My name's Molly, and I have a very good friend who's currently transitioning, and
went out, she still gets misgendered pretty often.
Yeah.
But she's not at a space where she's comfortable correcting it or having me correct it.
Okay.
So what are some ways to validate and kind of hold her in those situations?
Such a brilliant question. Thank you so much for that. One of the things I'll say, and I'm glad that you acknowledge that she wasn't comfortable just yet with either her doing it or you doing it. I think that's really important. That you obviously need to have consent from somebody. And it can also be, as you can imagine, really just terrifying, and it can feel dangerous to correct people on that. You're outing yourself, right? And so what kind of violence, literal violence, could you be bringing to yourself? So it's important to respect someone's preferences and their comfort level there. This is about finding your people. She's so lucky to have you, so lucky to have you there. One of the things I would tell you, I would have you do, is before you all are even going out, make sure you're going out to the most inclusive spaces you can be, right? I think that this happens often when people are in restaurants, right? You're in restaurants and people use a lot of honorifics that are incredibly gendered, and that can be really invisibilizing for trans folks, and be invisibilizing for non-binary folks. So one of the things is you want to try to go to places where there is inclusive language being used. If you've been misgendered at a place and folks are not correcting it, maybe don't be so quick to go back to those places. That's one of the things. But I think the most important thing there is before you even go out, making sure that she knows you have her back. And if at any time she is comfortable with you making that correction, saying, you know what, I got you. I will say, if she ever says, you know what, it's okay to do it, one of the ways that I've been able to show up in solidarity with my trans colleagues, it's not necessarily correcting a waiter or a waitress or a wait person right there in the space. It's like going to the bathroom and then catching the wait person over there. Just so you know, she uses she pronouns, right, like that kind of thing. So it's out of the presence of that person, so they don't have to be further embarrassed by it. But again, make sure you get that consent first. But just being that solidarity kind of rock for that person before you go out, and her knowing consistently that you have her back is probably the most important thing. And again, continuing to find your people, continuing to find some more community that can be the your kind of your crew when you go out. So yeah, those are some of the things. Those are some of the things I can think of. Sure.
Great. All right. I think maybe we'll try to do for one more question, and the one I want to do, and this one's a tough one, and it's going to be a long answer, and that's fine.
Okay.
How do we try to convince? This is the religious brigade, but there are some folks, religious. How do we get them to be more accepting? Any points that work better than most? It's a tough one.
It really is, and it's tough. Like I say this as a person of faith. It is really hard. It's really, really hard. A person of faith from the South, right? One of the arguments, and I mean, we've used this for so long that I don't know how much it resonates with folks, but one of the arguments is about, frankly, God's love. And I mean, I don't want to get too much into this, but it truly is about God's love, Jesus' love, right? Depending on what kind of religion we're talking about, and that this kind of discrimination, this kind of oppression is not ever what was preached in anybody's good book. And that love and acceptance is one of the most central themes in so many of these texts. And the best ways that we can exhibit, again, because this is talking about religion, the way that we can exhibit the reality of God's love is to be accepting, is to create more communities and to create more affirming spaces. The point that I want to put on that, though, is about protecting our own peace. And I think it's really important because this is all about allyship. It's all about advocacy. But there does sometimes come a time where you are actually not going to be able to make the headway that you want. And you may need to make an assessment of where you're spending your time and your labor and the kind of impact it's having on you. We need you all for this work. We need you for this fight. And I see too often advocates that are banging their heads up against a cement wall that is not moving. And it is as important for the future and the resilience of our movement for you to sometimes make an assessment and say, maybe this isn't where I put my labor any longer. And sometimes it's arguing with strangers on Facebook, and sometimes it's the transphobic uncle. But we have to be protecting our peace with the same kind of vigor that we are advocating. Final point on that is remember your people. This is why we need to have strength in numbers. Sometimes if you decide, look, for my piece, I got to take a step back, it's good to have somebody else you can tag in. I'll say that especially for folks who are holding marginalized identities, this is what allies are for. It is not your job. It's not the job of folks of color to be fighting racism. Tag in that white ally. That's what they're for. LGBTQ folks should be the only ones that are jumping up and down about homophobia and transphobia. Tag in those straight folks. That's what they're for, right? And that is why intersectionality matters. We can move up, move back for each other, for our movements, all right? That's how we stay powerful. That's how we stay resilient.
Beautiful. Wonderful. All righty.
All right.
Well, great. So, a couple quick things here. Amber, first of all, thank you.
So very welcome. Thank you.
So excited that you've been here and our folks get to see this. A few things. Remember, you guys can all sign up on the DE&I T-Nation page to sign up to be part of the Pride ERG. We need you. As Amber said, we got to tag people in and out.
That's right.
It's continuous. And, we also have a ton of resources available for you. We've got an awesome glossary. We've got resources if you're how to support somebody transitioning in the workplace. Tons of great stuff out there. So please join in there. And we also, upcoming, somebody said, what are we doing beyond Pride? We're doing stuff. First of all, if you have ideas in this month of things to do, by all means, come join. This fall, we'll have, for our LGBTQ plus employees, we have a leadership development program in the works that is coming to you this fall. Please stay tuned to T-Nation and our Slack channels. We'll let you know when that's available to submit your applications. We also have in November Transgender Awareness Week, and we're going to bring in a lot more compelling stories that as well. Final reminder, Bellevue Peeps. I know New York, you guys have Pride this weekend. Seattle Pride is this weekend. If you are in Bellevue, you and your friends, today is the last day to sign up. We've got a few more slots. It's limited availability, but by all means, please join us. We're super excited to be all back in person. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you, Jen.
Happy Pride,
Happy
y'all.
Pride, friend. Happy Pride. Thank y'all.